Welcome, space explorers and curious minds, to the Space and Astronomy podcast.
Great to be here.
We're your gateway to the wonders of the cosmos, where, science meets imagination and reason. I'm your guide today, and we're embarking on a really profound deep dive.
Yeah, this one goes deep.
It really does. It transcends the usual stuff, the rockets, the orbits, and touches the very core of, well, human identity, our morality, the future of our species, really.
With big questions.
Huge questions. Our mission today, to grapple with the ethics of space colonization, a philosophical debate. So this isn't just about, can we technically do it? How many rockets? The engineering marvel of it all. No, it's about a much deeper, much harder question.
Is it right?
Exactly. Is it right ethically, morally, philosophically to colonize space? Should humanity spread out beyond Earth, our, fragile home? Or should we maybe pause, reflect a bit, choose a different path before we reach for the stars?
And these aren't just sci-fi scenarios anymore, are they?
Not at all. That's the crucial point. They are increasingly real, pressing, urgent questions, especially with the speed of advancements we're seeing. Private companies, space agencies, it's happening.
It really is accelerating.
So buckle up, everyone, because we're about to launch into a journey of ideas that are, well, as expansive and complex as the universe itself. Our aim, to give you the essential nuggets, the different perspectives you need to be truly informed on this massive topic.
Let's do it.
Okay, first things first. Before we dive into the ethics, let's just lay some groundwork, define our terms. What do we actually mean by space colonization?
Yeah, good starting point.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like sending a few folks to the ISS.
Right. Or even, say, a temporary moon base for a couple of years. No, we're talking about something much bigger. We mean establishing permanent, self-sustaining human communities beyond Earth.
Permanent, self-sustaining. Keywords there.
Definitely. And this could look like different things, right? Maybe robust settlements on the moon, maybe sprawling cities on Mars. That's the big one people talk about.
Or even further out. Moons of Jupiter, Saturn, maybe those big orbital habitats.
Exactly. O'Neill cylinders, things like that. And the practicalities. I mean, they're just immense. You're talking about creating totally closed-loop environment.
Everything recycled. Air, water, waste, everything.
Everything. Plus, sophisticated farms, growing diverse food without resupply, factories, making tools from local resources, all the infrastructure needed to support complex human life indefinitely, off-world.
You're basically talking about replicating entire societies, governance, culture, economies, the whole package.
Yeah, building new worlds, literally.
And that right there is where the conversation shifts. It moves dramatically from, the dreams of science fiction, the novels, the movies.
Which felt so distant for so long.
Exactly. To something that's rapidly approaching the realm of science fact, possibility, even probability, some might argue.
It's almost dizzying, the speed.
It is. And we're seeing real-world examples now.
Yeah.
Tangible stuff, like SpaceX. They're not just talking short trips. They're openly envisioning, designing, planning for self-sustaining cities on Mars.
It's in their mission statement, essentially.
Right. And you've got the major space agencies, NASA, ES, others. They're developing concrete funded plans for permanent lunar bases, not just research outposts anymore.
These are on the drawing board, budgets allocated.
Engineers are working on it. Political will is starting to align. It's not just theory. And this shift, this tangible possibility coming towards us, it forces us to confront that really fundamental question. You hear it echoed throughout history.
Just because we can.
Does that mean we should? Exactly. And this isn't just, a philosophical exercise for academics. It's the core tension of our deep dive today. It forces us to think about our collective responsibility as a species, looking out at the stars, considering that next giant leap.
Okay, let's really dig into that then. Given that shift from maybe fiction to maybe fact, what are the compelling arguments, the strong reasons why humanity should spread out? Why might it be not just an ambition, but maybe even a moral imperative?
Well, one of the most powerful arguments, the one you hear most often, probably because it taps into our basic survival instincts, is this idea of space colonization as a moral duty, or maybe an insurance policy for humanity.
An insurance policy? How so?
The core idea is just the long-term survival of our species. Think about it. Earth is amazing, beautiful, resilient, but it's fundamentally a single point of failure for human civilization.
One basket for all our eggs.
Precisely. And there are plenty of catastrophic events, natural or, frankly, human-made, that could realistically make Earth uninhabitable. or at least knock civilization back centuries, make it impossible to sustain billions of people.
What kind of events are we talking about?
Well, the obvious one is a massive asteroid impact, right? Like the dinosaur killer. That could trigger global ecological collapse. Or the chilling one, global nuclear war. The aftermath nuclear winter, radiation could make huge parts of the planet hostile for generations.
Grim possibilities.
Very. Then you have potential future pandemics, maybe far worse than anything we've seen. Or just irreversible ecological collapse, where the environment just can't support us anymore. Climate change reaching a tipping point.
Stephen Hawking talked about this, didn't he?
He did, famously. He said something like, "I don't think we will survive another 1,000 years without escaping beyond our fragile planet." It's a stark warning.
Wow. 1,000 years. That's sobering.
It is. And so for many people who support colonization, this isn't just an option, it's framed as a dire necessity. If we truly value human life, if we believe in the future of our species, its potential, then, they argue, there's a moral obligation to ensure its survival by spreading out, distributing the risk.
Like backing up your hard drive, but for humanity.
Kind of, yeah. A cosmic backup plan. It's fundamental self-preservation, just scaled up to the species level.
That's a potent idea, that single point of failure. Makes you think, is it pragmatic acceptance of risk, or does it imply we're giving up on fixing Earth? That's a side debate, maybe.
It's definitely part of the tension, yeah.
But beyond just survival, there's another big argument, right? The innovation angle. Space colonization as this incredible engine for scientific progress and technological breakthroughs.
Absolutely. Think of the sheer difficulty. Colonizing space isn't just about tweaking current tech. It demands unprecedented breakthroughs.
Like what specifically?
Revolutionary advances in energy, for starters.
Sure.
Powering colonies far from the sun. That needs new physics, maybe, or incredible fusion power, massive solar arrays. Then sustainability. Truly closed-loop life support, recycling everything perfectly forever. That's a huge leap.
We struggle with recycling here on Earth.
Exactly. Then AI, you'd need incredibly sophisticated AI for autonomous operations, managing complex systems far from human help. And medicine, dealing with low gravity, high radiation isolation. New physiological challenges.
Okay, so massive challenges requiring massive innovation. But how does that help us back here?
That's the exciting part, the potential ripple effect. These advances, driven by the necessity of space, could provide profound, unexpected benefits right here on Earth.
We've seen that before, haven't we? With earlier space stuff.
We have. Look at the Apollo program. People think man on the moon, but it spurred innovations that led directly to things we use every day. GPS technology came out of that. Advanced weather satellites, understanding our climate, predicting storms, even sophisticated water filtration systems used in disaster zones now.
Right, things like Velcro, memory foam. Okay, maybe not Velcro, but you get the point. Tangible spin-offs.
Precisely. So the speculation is, could building a self-sustaining Mars colony lead to unforeseen breakthroughs in, say, climate tech? Could we discover ways to reverse global warming that we can't even imagine now, forced by the need to terraform Mars?
Or new kinds of agriculture. Super efficient hydroponics or vertical farms developed for Mars that could help feed billions here.
Exactly. It's a compelling vision of progress, driven by tackling this immense off-world challenge. Necessity is the mother of invention on a planetary scale.
Okay, survival innovation. What else is driving the pro side?
Well, there's something perhaps more intangible, but undeniably profound. It's about inspiration, about the expansion of human consciousness itself.
The final frontier spirit.
Kind of. At its core, there's this inherent human urge to explore, isn't there? It's deep-seated. It pushed us out of caves, across oceans, and eventually into orbit. It seems to be part of who we are.
The drive to see what's over the next hill or the next planet.
Right. And space colonization as this huge unifying goal could potentially reignite a collective sense of purpose on a global scale.
Unifying. In today's world, that seems ambitious.
It does, but think about it. A world often fractured by politics, economics, conflict. Maybe a shared goal, like establishing humanity among the stars, could be a powerful rallying cry. Foster cooperation. Create a shared identity as Earthlings looking outward.
The cosmic perspective shift.
Exactly. And that leads to the next point. The potential to reshape our philosophies, our cultures, our ethics, even our spirituality. Just imagine living on another planet, looking back at Earth, that tiny blue marble. How does that change you?
Seeing the fragility, maybe? The interconnectedness?
Perhaps. How about our art, music, literature evolve? Our religions?
It is easy to get swept up in that vision. the potential, the purpose. It's powerful stuff.
It is.
But
There's always but, isn't there? This is where it gets really interesting, because not everyone buys into this grand vision. There are some very significant, very compelling ethical objections, and we absolutely have to give them equal weight.
definitely. And the first one you often hear, perhaps the most immediate and relatable critique, is this idea of escapism, often phrased bluntly as fix Earth first.
Right. Why spend fortunes on Mars when we have huge problems here?
That's the core of it. Critics see space colonization not as noble, but as a potential distraction. Maybe even a moral cop-out from our responsibilities right here, right now.
A distraction from climate change, poverty, inequality.
Exactly. They question the justification of spending billions, potentially trillions. I mean, the estimated costs for a Mars colony are astronomical. Hundreds of billions minimum, maybe trillions over decades.
While here on Earth. While here, we're grappling with extreme poverty. What is it? Nearly 10% of the world living on less than a couple of dollars a day. Deepening inequality. An escalating climate crisis threatening livelihoods everywhere.
So the argument is resource allocation. Those billions could be used differently.
That's a big part of it. But it's also about accountability. Are we just looking for an exit strategy? Trying to avoid fixing the immense environmental damage and social problems we've already caused here?
Running away instead of cleaning up our mess.
Some critics frame it exactly like that. They argue quite powerfully that before we even think about replicating our society elsewhere, we should first prove we can live sustainably, equitably, peacefully right here on Earth.
Master this planet before messing up another one.
Essentially, yes. It challenges the whole premise of expansion when our own foundation seems, well, shaky to say the least.
Okay, that fix Earth first argument resonates. What's the next major ethical concern?
This one gets into deep philosophical territory. Environmental ethics, but applied cosmically, beyond just human concerns.
So not just about resources for us, but the environments themselves.
Exactly. Philosophers are asking, do planets, moons, asteroids, even if they seem lifeless to us, now possess intrinsic value? Value independent of human use or habitation.
Intrinsic value, meaning value just by existing.
Precisely. If we go to Mars and start building cities or mine asteroids for water, ice, or metals, what are we doing to environments that have been pristine, untouched for billions of years?
We could be destroying unique geology, maybe. Or environments that could hold clues about the origins of life.
Or maybe even simple prebiotic chemistry that hasn't quite crossed the threshold into life but is scientifically priceless. Or maybe, just maybe, they have value simply because they're untouched, unique parts of the cosmos. This ties into concepts like deep ecology.
Deep ecology, what's that?
It's the idea that all elements of nature, not just sentient beings, have moral standing, inherent worth. So under this view, maybe a specific Martian canyon, formed over eons, has a right to exist undisturbed, regardless of whether it has life or resources we want.
Even if it's just rocks and dust.
Even then, does our ability to exploit or change it automatically give us the moral right to do so? It forces us to expand our ethical circle way beyond just human interests. It's a big ask.
Wow, okay, so we have fix Earth first and cosmic environmental ethics. What else?
There's a really troubling historical parallel that gets raised, especially by thinkers looking at this through a decolonial or post-colonial lens. The concern is neocolonialism in space.
Neocolonialism, like repeating the mistakes of Earth's colonial history.
Exactly. Think back to European empires claiming vast territories, often inhabited lands, without consent, leading to exploitation, destruction, genocide. The warning is stark. Are we about to do the same thing to celestial bodies? Claiming the moon, Mars, asteroids without real reflection, without a proper ethical framework, without global consensus.
Just planting flags and saying mine.
Right. Or worse, corporations doing it. Imagine powerful nations or giant private companies carving up Mars like the scramble for Africa, setting up exclusive mining rights on asteroids. It could easily recreate the same hierarchies, the same injustices, the same exploitation we've seen on Earth, just out there.
Driven by resources and power again?
Historically, that's often been the driver, and space could become the next big arena for geopolitical conflict and economic dominance, making existing power imbalances even worse. The fear is we end up exporting our worst habits along with our rockets.
That's a deeply unsettling thought, exporting our flaws.
It is.
And there's another really practical but deeply ethical question tied into this, isn't there? It gets mentioned, but maybe not enough. Who actually gets to go?
Yes. The who gets left behind question. Crucial.
If space colonization is pitched as this survival plan for humanity, like the insurance policy idea, well, who is that insurance policy for?
Right, because let's be honest, the cost is astronomical. A trip to orbit is tens of millions of dollars now. Getting to Mars, setting up a life there, the ticket price would be unimaginable for most people.
So it suggests only the very wealthy, the powerful, could afford to escape if Earth really faced decline.
That's the immediate conclusion, yes. Which raises a massive ethical red flag. Would colonization just deepen the inequalities we already have? Massive.
We're creating a two-tiered humanity almost.
Yeah, it's the nightmare scenario, some pain. Earth becoming potentially overcrowded, resource depleted, maybe a slum planet, while a select elite build their, gated communities on Mars or in fancy orbital habitats.
Wow. That is a dark vision.
It is. So from the critic's viewpoint, space colonization isn't just risky physically. It's loaded with these profound moral dangers. It could worsen the very problems inequality, resource conflict it sometimes claims it might solve. It could create this ultimate division between the cosmic haves and have-nots.
Okay, so we have these powerful arguments for survival, innovation, inspiration, and these deeply troubling arguments against escapism, environmental damage, neocolonialism, inequality. It's a lot to weigh.
It really is. And this whole discussion raises an important question. How do we even begin to weigh these, to make sense of them? This is where bringing in some more formal philosophical frameworks can be really helpful. They give us different lenses, different tools for thinking it through.
Right, not just gut feelings, but structured ways to analyze it. Let's try that. Where should we start? Utilitarianism seems like a common one.
Good place to start. Utilitarianism, fundamentally, it asks, does this action maximize overall well-being or happiness for the greatest number of people, considering everyone affected now and in the future?
The greatest good for the greatest number.
Exactly. So a utilitarian would try to do a kind of cosmic cost-benefit analysis. On the one hand, if spreading humanity out saves billions of lives long-term from Earth disasters, ensures survival for millennia, expands knowledge exponentially, the total long-term good or well-being might vastly outweigh the initial costs and risks.
Securing humanity's future across multiple worlds generates more overall happiness than staying on one vulnerable planet.
That would be the argument, yes. The sum total of well-being is potentially much higher. But, and this is crucial for utilitarianism, there's the other side of the ledger.
The costs and negative consequences.
Right. What if colonization leads to destroying unique environments? What if it massively deepens inequality, benefiting only a few while billions on Earth suffer or pay the price? What if the resources spent on space could have generated more immediate well-being is spent on poverty reduction or climate solutions here and now?
So a utilitarian could also argue against it if the harms or opportunity costs outweigh the projected benefits.
Absolutely. It depends entirely on how you weigh all those factors: present suffering versus future survival, human well-being versus environmental value, the certainty of current costs versus the speculation of future benefits. It's incredibly complex to calculate that greatest good. How do you weigh those? It really forces you, the listener, to think about your own values.
Okay, so utilitarianism is about consequences, the overall balance sheet of good versus bad. What's another approach?
Let's look at deontology. Often associated with Immanuel Kant, this framework shifts the focus completely away from consequences.
Away from outcomes. So what does it focus on?
Duties, moral rules, principles. Deontology says certain actions are inherently right or wrong, based on whether they adhere to universal moral duties, regardless of the outcome.
So it's about the action itself, not what happens because of it.
Exactly. The core question becomes, what moral duties do we have regarding space? Do we have a duty, for instance, to preserve nature, even seemingly lifeless nature, just because it exists?
A duty to respect the thing in itself.
You could put it that way. Do we have a duty to treat everything potentially, including environments, as an end in itself, not just means to our own ends like survival or profit? Is there a fundamental duty to avoid exploitation?
How would that apply to space colonization then?
Well, imagine that scenario again. A company finds valuable minerals in a unique Martian geological site. A utilitarian might say, mine it if the benefits outweigh the harm. But a deontologist might say, no, we have a duty to preserve this unique cosmic feature regardless of the potential benefit. Full stop.
So the motive matters too.
Very much. If the primary driver for colonization is profit for a corporation or power for a nation, a deontologist would likely find that morally suspect, even if good things accidentally resulted. It violates the duty to treat space or potential future inhabitants, or even just the principle of fairness, as ends in themselves. It's about acting rightly according to principle, not just aiming for a good result.
Okay, utilitarianism, consequences, deontology, duties. What else?
How about virtue ethics? This takes yet another angle. It shifts the focus from actions or rules to the character of the actor.
So it asks what kind of people we are, or what kind of species we are if we do this.
Precisely. What character traits does space colonization reflect in humanity? Does this grand project demonstrate positive virtues, like courage, curiosity, hope for the future, a responsible drive for progress?
If it's driven by wisdom, good stewardship, shared purpose.
Where a virtue ethicist might support it, seeing it as an expression of humanity's better nature, our potential for greatness.
Right.
But conversely,
Does it reveal negative traits?
right, does it show arrogance,
Yeah.
hubris, believing we can just escape the problems we made,
Hmm.
greed, escapism, avoiding our responsibilities here?
So it's about the moral quality of the endeavor itself and what it says about us.
Exactly. A virtue ethicist looks at the motivations, the intentions, the overall moral posture. If colonization fosters collective wisdom, responsibility, humility, it's virtuous. If it reflects hubris, recklessness, or avoidance, it's ethically questionable, regardless of outcome or adherence to specific rules. It's about becoming better beings through our actions.
Fascinating. One more. You mentioned posthumanism earlier. How does that fit in?
Posthumanism offers perhaps the most radical challenge to our usual way of thinking. It directly attacks anthropocentrism.
Anthropocentrism, the idea that humans are the center of everything, the measure of all things.
Exactly. Posthumanists challenge that, they ask.
Yeah.
Is space colonization just another massive example of human exceptionalism? Us putting our species first, above everything else, potentially ignoring or destroying other forms of value in the universe?
Value beyond human utility.
Yes. Are we ignoring the potential inherent value of other species, even microbial ones, other ecosystems? The possibility of finding truly alien life, simply because they don't fit our narrow, human-centric definition of what's important or sentient?
So it pushes us to ask who or what else matters.
Precisely. It demands we consider a much broader scope for ethics, not just who gets to go or what resources are there for us, but who or what else has moral standing in the cosmos. It encourages this profound humility, recognizing we might be just one part of a much larger, incredibly complex web of existence. The value of a Martian microbe or the unique chemistry in Europa's ocean, from a cosmic perspective, maybe that's just as significant as us.
It reframes the universe not as a resource for us, but as something else. Something to relate to, maybe?
Something like that. It urges respect, caution, and a move away from seeing everything purely through the lens of human benefit.
Okay. These frameworks, utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, posthumanism, they definitely give us different ways to slice the problem. But here's where it feels like it gets even more complicated. The stakes jump way up. What if? What if we actually find life out there?
Yes, that changes everything. Finding life, even simple microbial life, is the absolute game changer. It fundamentally alters the entire ethical calculation we've been discussing.
So all those frameworks might lead to different conclusions if there's life involved.
Dramatically different, potentially. Imagine the scenarios. We land a probe on Europa, drill through the ice, and find microbes swimming in that ocean. Maybe even something more complex.
Or digging on Mars and finding clear fossils of ancient bacteria. Proof Mars was alive.
Or the ultimate one. Detecting signals from an intelligent civilization, confirming we are truly not alone.
Under any of those scenarios, colonization seems different.
Immensely different. Would colonization still be ethical? If we found even one native microbe on Mars, does that make the whole planet off limits? Or does it just require extreme caution? What level of life triggers what level of moral obligation?
The questions become incredibly sharp.
And the answers are far from simple. It would demand an unprecedented global conversation, probably the most important conversation in human history.
And this is where that idea you mentioned, the prime directive, really comes into play, isn't it?
Exactly. Borrowed from sci-fi, yes, but it captures a core ethical intuition many feel strongly about, a principle of non-interference.
A moral duty not to mess with alien ecosystems.
Precisely. Whether they're simple microbes or complex biospheres or, hypothetically, civilizations. The argument is stark. If we blunder in carrying Earth microbes on our suits or landers, or start digging and changing the environment, we could cause irreversible harm.
Contaminating a whole world, wiping out something unique before we even understand it.
That's the fear. We could destroy a completely unique evolutionary path, billions of years in the making, entirely separate from Earth's. The extreme consequence, even if we didn't mean to. It could be effectively interplanetary genocide.
Mandicide, even for microbes.
In the sense of wiping out a unique form of life, yes. Eradicating a whole branch of the tree of life, potentially. It's a horrifying thought. So yeah, colonization in what we think is a lifeless universe is one complex ethical challenge.
But colonization in a universe we know is living.
That transforms it entirely. It becomes a moral minefield. It demands maximum caution, profound humility, and probably a whole new set of rules for how we engage with the cosmos.
Rules. Governance. That seems critical. If we connect this all back to the bigger picture, colonization isn't going to happen in a vacuum, right? Literally or figuratively. It needs structure.
Absolutely. It fundamentally requires rules, robust governance, a globally agreed upon framework. Otherwise, it risks descending into chaos, conflict, and just repeating all our worst historical mistakes on a grander scale.
So what do we have now? Is there anything in place?
We have a starting point, a foundation. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967. It's a landmark piece of international law.
What does it say, basically?
Crucially, it states that outer space, the moon, other planets, belongs to all humanity. It's the province of all mankind. No single nation can claim sovereignty over a celestial body. It also calls for peaceful exploration and use.
That sounds good. The province of all mankind.
It's a powerful, visionary statement. But, and it's a big but, how do you enforce it? Especially now in an era where it's not just nations, but powerful private companies developing the ability to go there, build things, mine resources.
All right. What stops a company from just setting up on an asteroid and claiming the resources? Or building a private base on the moon?
That's the enforcement challenge. The treaty was written before the rise of commercial space giants like SpaceX or Blue Origin. The framework, while good for its time, probably isn't robust enough for permanent settlements, large-scale resource extraction, potential private space empires.
So we need something new, something stronger.
Urgently. We need new frameworks. Systems built on real global cooperation, not just national interests. Rigorous ethical oversight committees, maybe even, as some suggest, a kind of space constitution outlining rights, responsibilities, dispute resolution for humanity off Earth.
Without that.
Without that, it could become a free-for-all. A cosmic Wild West. A scramble for territory and resources, mirroring the worst parts of colonial history, but with potentially much higher stakes. Conflict seems almost inevitable, without clear, enforceable rules agreed upon by everyone.
And this connects back to those other concerns, like neo-colonialism.
Directly.
Yeah.
And it also highlights another crucial voice that needs to be central in this conversation, but is often overlooked.
Which is?
Indigenous perspectives. Applying decolonial ethics to space.
Decolonial ethics, thinking about how we avoid repeating colonial patterns.
Exactly. We have so many painful, invaluable lessons from Earth's history. Indigenous peoples, cultures that have suffered immensely from terrestrial colonization and exploitation, offer critical warnings. They consistently cautioned against simply transplanting that colonial mindset of domination, extraction, claiming territory into space.
Reminding us that good intentions often weren't enough.
Precisely. Colonization, even when framed as bringing progress or civilization, historically led to devastating consequences. Destruction of cultures, ecosystems, knowledge systems, ways of life. Often it was about imposing one way of being rather than coexisting.
So a truly ethical space future needs a different mindset.
Radically different, perhaps. It requires moving away from asking, how can we conquer space? Or how do we exploit its resources? Towards questions like, how can we coexist with the cosmos?
To coexist, that implies a relationship, not just use.
Yes. It demands humility,
Yeah.
reciprocity, giving back, minimizing impact, not just taking, deep listening, trying to understand the intrinsic value of space, of other worlds, maybe even their spiritual significance, not just their material worth to us. It's about building a respectful relationship, not asserting dominion. It challenges our whole notion of progress.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground. Arguments for, arguments against, philosophical lenses, the life question, governance, indigenous perspectives. So where does this leave us? Is there any path forward? Is there such a thing as ethical space colonization? Or is it just too fraught?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there a middle ground?
Can we find one?
The optimistic view, the hope is, maybe. Perhaps colonization itself isn't inherently wrong, but as the saying goes, it's the how that matters. It all comes down to the principles we choose to guide us.
So what would those principles look like, drawn from everything we've discussed?
Well, first, sustainability. We absolutely have to move beyond Earth's model of endless extraction. Maybe that means developing truly circular economies in space from day one, using resources in situ, but carefully, minimizing impact, not stripping moons bare.
Okay, sustainability. What
Well,
else?
equity. This is huge. We need mechanisms to ensure access and benefits aren't just for the super rich elite. How do we structure this so it broadly benefits humanity? Maybe through international space trusts, universal access to space-derived tech or knowledge. It can't just be gated communities on Mars.
Critical point. Next.
Non-interference. If we find life, even simple life, we need an absolute commitment to preserving it. Understanding its value, avoiding contamination. That prime directive idea needs real teeth, meticulous protocols.
Got it. Sustainability, equity, non-interference. Anything else?
Global consensus and cooperation.
I think.
This cannot be a unilateral rush by one nation or one company. It needs to be a truly cooperative international effort governed by a shared, transparent global framework. Shared values may be enforced by a UN-like space authority. No single entity in control.
So if we could actually adhere to principles like those.
If we could, and that's a massive if requiring immense political will and ethical commitment, then maybe, just maybe, space colonization could become humanity's greatest ethical achievement, a testament to our ability to learn, to grow responsibly, to act with collective wisdom. Instead of being our final, biggest mistake, it really demands the absolute best of us.
It really does. As we stand here on the brink potentially of becoming an interplanetary species, this deep dive really underscores the need to just pause. Not necessarily to stop, but to think, really think, to question, plan, debate. Space colonization is so clearly more than just engineering. It's not just a science problem. It's a profound moral challenge, tangled up with who we are, what we value, what we want to become.
And the decisions we make now, or the ones we fail to make, they won't just affect us. They'll echo for potentially thousands of years, maybe across star systems. The stakes are cosmic.
It really forces us, doesn't it, to ask those huge fundamental questions.
It does. Like, who are we, really, when we face the sheer vastness of space and gain the power to reshape worlds? What kind of future do we genuinely want? For ourselves, for those who come after us, and crucially, for any other life we might encounter?
And the big one.
Yeah. Can we actually carry the hard-won lessons from Earth about sustainability, equity, respect, non-interference? Can we carry those with us to the stars? Or are we doomed to just export our flaws as easily as we export our machines, scattering our problems across the solar system?
And the answer to that.
The answer to that, I think, is still up to us to write.
A profound thought to end on. Thank you for joining this really cosmic conversation here on the Space and Astronomy podcast.
My pleasure. Important discussion.
Absolutely. If you, our listeners, found today's deep dive thought-provoking, maybe a bit challenging, hopefully enlightening, please do subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us a review. It really helps. And share this deep dive with your fellow space enthusiasts, your philosopher friends, anyone looking up at the night sky and wondering, what's next?
Keep asking the big questions.
Exactly. Until next time, keep looking up and keep thinking deep.